The emergency klaxons blared across the Galactic Council's sprawling observation deck as representatives from 37 species scrambled to their stations. Ambassador Ziv Toril, the ancient Vulneran diplomat whose 12 eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, gripped the railing with 4 of his tentacle-like appendages. He had never seen anything like this. "What in the name of the 7 moons is that?" he whispered, voice barely audible over the chaos. The massive object that had just emerged from slip space hung against the backdrop of stars like a predator sizing up its prey. Nearly 2 kilometers long, its angular hull was patterned with scars and battle marks that told stories of conflicts the Council knew nothing about. This was not the usual human diplomatic vessel or merchant ship they had grown accustomed to in the decades since first contact. This was something else entirely. "The humans call it the UES Defiance," replied Taliri, the Council's chief intelligence officer. The slender Mersian's translucent skin pulsed with nervous bioluminescence as she brought up the preliminary scans. "It appears to be a battleship." A hush fell over the observation deck. For centuries, the Galactic Compact had forbidden the construction of dedicated war vessels. Defense ships, yes. Patrol cruisers, certainly. But nothing like this leviathan of focused military power. Nothing designed with the sole purpose of bringing overwhelming force to bear against an enemy. "Impossible," snorted Drax Bolverine, the Taurian ambassador. His massive frame towered over most other representatives, matched only by the silent Jaraxian delegation in the corner. "The humans are newcomers, barely a century into space. They wouldn't dare violate the compact so blatantly." Yet there it was, growing larger on the main view screen as it approached the Council station at 1/4 sublight speed. Its weapon ports remained closed, but thermal scans revealed power signatures unlike anything their analysts had seen before. Captain Lena Wright stood on the command deck of the Defiance, her weathered face betraying none of the anxiety churning in her gut. 28 years in the United Earth Navy had taught her to mask her emotions, especially when the stakes were this high. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency around her, each motion deliberate and precise. "Council Station is hailing us, Captain," reported Lieutenant Chen, her communications officer. "They're requesting immediate explanation for our appearance." Wright allowed herself a thin smile. "I bet they are." She straightened her midnight blue uniform and nodded. "Put them through. Main screen only. Let's not give them too much to look at just yet." The view screen flickered, revealing the Council's diplomatic liaison, an Altrusian with characteristic silver skin and pupil-less eyes. "Captain Wright," the alien began, voice modulated to approximate human speech patterns. "Your vessel's arrival was not scheduled, and its classification appears to be problematic. The Council requires immediate clarification." "Liaison Thelon," Wright replied with practiced formality. "The UES Defiance presents itself to the Galactic Council as the first official demonstration of Earth's sovereign defense initiative. We request formal recognition and docking privileges." The Altrusian's silver skin rippled, the equivalent of a human's raised eyebrows. "Captain, surely you understand that vessels of this nature are restricted under Article 7 of the Galactic Compact. The compact that humanity was invited to sign, but has not yet ratified." Wright countered smoothly. "Yes, we're familiar with its provisions. We're also familiar with the Creole incursions into our outer colonies that the Council's patrol ships have been unable, or unwilling, to address." In the Council chamber, Ambassador Ziv Toril felt all 12 of his eyes widen. The human captain had just publicly acknowledged the Creole situation, something the Council had voted to keep classified just 3 cycles ago. How much did they know? Meanwhile, deep within the Defiance, Chief Engineer Raj Patel crawled through the maintenance tubes of Deck 14, muttering curses under his breath as he rerouted power conduits. The ship's revolutionary quantum drive was behaving unpredictably since their last slip space jump. That was the problem with being first. Sometimes things broke in ways no one could anticipate. "Torres, can you hear me?" He called into his comm. "I need a power reading from junction 47 alpha. Reading is fluctuating between 89 and 94%, came the response from his assistant. "But sir, there's something strange about the harmonic resonance. It's almost as if." The ship shuddered slightly, causing Paddle to bang his head against a conduit. "Damn it. Engineering to bridge, Captain. We've got some instability in the quantum matrix. Nothing critical, but I recommend we delay any power-intensive operations for the next 6 hours." On the bridge, Wright frowned. This was not part of the plan. The Defiance was supposed to make a flawless first impression, humanity's statement that they would no longer be the galaxy's vulnerable newcomers. Now her chief engineer was suggesting they might be limping into the most important diplomatic encounter in human history. "Understood, Chief. Do what you can." She turned back to the view screen where the Altrusian waited. "It seems we may require those docking privileges sooner rather than later, Liaison." Meanwhile, in the shadowy corners of the Council station, other eyes watched the human battleship with very different intentions. The Syndicate operative known only as Void adjusted his perception filters and slipped past another security checkpoint. The humans had just changed everything by bringing their warship here. His employers would pay handsomely for detailed scans, or better yet, for access to the vessel itself. As Wright navigated the delicate diplomatic waters, neither she nor the Council representatives had any idea of the wheels they were setting in motion, or that the real reason for the Defiance's appearance went far beyond a simple show of human military capability. The truth lay sealed in Captain Wright's personal quarters, contained within a quantum-locked case that only she could open. Inside was information that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Council, evidence that someone among their hallowed ranks had been playing a very long and very dangerous game with humanity caught in the middle, and the Defiance had come to change the rules. Captain Wright turned away from the view screen, keeping her expression neutral until the connection with the Council liaison terminated. Only then did she allow her shoulders to drop slightly, the weight of command momentarily visible to her bridge crew. "Well, that went about as expected," she said, addressing her XO, Commander Daniel Hayes. "They're rattled, but they're granting us conditional docking privileges. We have 12 hours to make our case before the full Council." Hayes nodded, his weathered face betraying little emotion. 20 years of friendship with Lena had taught him to read between her carefully chosen words. "And if they reject our evidence?" Wright's eyes hardened. "Then we execute Contingency Delta and pray the Artemis and Orion are in position if we need extraction." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what Contingency Delta meant: a high-speed tactical retreat with probable hostile engagement. No one had expected this mission to end in combat, but then again, the Defiance hadn't been built just for show. 6 months earlier, the United Earth Parliament had convened in an emergency closed session beneath the restored dome of Old Geneva. The chamber had been swept for surveillance devices 3 times before Admiral Santiago had taken the floor, his grim expression telling the assembled representatives everything they needed to know before he'd spoken a word. "Ladies and gentlemen," he'd begun, activating the holographic display at the center of the chamber. "What I'm about to share has been classified at the highest level. 3 weeks ago, the research outpost on Proxima Centauri IV went silent. We dispatched the UES Hermes to investigate. The display showed the twisted wreckage of what had once been a scientific station. Buildings ripped open like tin cans, equipment scattered across the colony's main plaza. 47 scientists and their families. All gone," Santiago had continued. "Initially, we suspected Creole raiders, but the Hermes found this." The image shifted to show a strange cylindrical object, covered in markings that clearly were not Creole in origin. "This technology bears the manufacturing signature of the Directions, supposedly our allies on the Council. More troublingly, we've traced quantum communications between this device and a hidden relay near Arcturus, a relay using Council diplomatic frequencies." That revelation had changed everything. Humanity had spent decades believing they were slowly earning the trust of the galactic community. They'd accepted restrictions on their military development, limitations on their expansion, all in the name of peaceful coexistence, and all while someone on the council had apparently been testing their vulnerabilities. Now, as the Defiance approached the immense structure of Celestial Station, the Galactic Council's primary diplomatic hub, Wright couldn't help but marvel at the irony. The very restrictions placed on human military development had forced Earth's engineers to think differently, to innovate in ways the Council races never anticipated. The Defiance wasn't just big, it was revolutionary, a testament to humanity's tendency to thrive when backed into a corner. In his maintenance tube on Deck 14, Raj Patel finished the last of his adjustments and wiped sweat from his brow. The quantum matrix was stabilizing, but something still felt off about the readings. He closed the access panel and began the awkward crawl back toward the main engineering section. "Taurus, I'm heading back. Keep an eye on those fluctuations, especially as we approach docking procedures." "Yes, sir. Though, there's something else. I'm picking up some kind of signal scanning our lower decks. Very faint, but definitely not a standard Council security sweep." Patel frowned. "Put it through to my personal console. And Taurus, keep this between us for now." Meanwhile, in the officers' mess, Dr. Sarah Kelly, the ship's chief science officer, was briefing her team on what to expect during the Council presentation. The 5 specialists gathered around the table represented Earth's best minds in xenobiology, quantum physics, and archaeological linguistics, disciplines that had suddenly become crucial to humanity's case. "Remember," Kelly emphasized, tapping the table for emphasis, "we're not just making accusations. We're presenting evidence of a direct violation of the compact by one or more Council members. Every claim needs to be bulletproof." "What if they simply refuse to acknowledge the evidence?" asked Dr. Abernathy, the team's forensic specialist. His skepticism wasn't unwarranted. The Council was notorious for bureaucratic stonewalling when convenient. Kelly's expression hardened. "That's why we're arriving on a battleship and not a diplomatic shuttle." Across the station, Ambassador Ziv Toril slithered through the less frequented corridors toward his private chambers. The human vessel's arrival had triggered a cascade of emergency meetings, but he had excused himself, claiming a need to prepare appropriate diplomatic responses. In reality, he needed to make contact, urgently. Once sealed in his quarters, he activated a series of countermeasures designed to fool the station's surveillance systems. Only then did he extract a small device from a hidden compartment beneath his sleeping pool. The communicator was unlike any official Council technology, its design intentionally archaic to avoid modern detection methods. "The humans have arrived with evidence," he whispered into the device. "They know about Proxima. The timeline has accelerated." The response was immediate. "The compact must be preserved at all costs. If the humans present their evidence to the full Council, everything we've built will collapse." "What would you have me do?" the ambassador asked, his voice steady despite the implications of what he was discussing. "The Defiance must not be allowed to complete its mission. Activate our asset on board." Ziv Toril hesitated, all 12 of his eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "That will mean casualties, acceptable losses to preserve galactic peace." The communication ended abruptly. The ambassador sat motionless for several minutes. When he'd joined this clandestine effort centuries ago, the goal had seemed noble: to guide the younger, more aggressive species away from the destructive patterns that had nearly destroyed the elder races during the Sundering Wars. The Compact's restrictions on military development weren't just bureaucratic rules, they were safeguards against another era of interstellar bloodshed. But now he found himself contemplating the deaths of hundreds of humans to protect that system. Had they strayed so far from their original purpose? Back on the Defiance, Captain Wright entered her private quarters and engaged the security locks. The quantum-sealed case sat exactly where she'd left it, seemingly untouched. Yet something felt wrong. Years of military instinct had taught her to trust her gut. And right now, Her gut was screaming that they were being washed. She tapped her personal communicator. Right to security. I want a level 1 sweep of all decks, focusing on communication signatures and unauthorized access points. Captain. The voice of her security chief sounded confused. We completed a sweep just before docking approach began. Do it again, Wright ordered, her eyes never leaving the case, and put a double detail on the quantum drive section. Something's not right. As the Defiance completed its final approach to the docking ring, none of its crew noticed the small, unmarked vessel that detached from the station's maintenance section and slipped into the battleship's sensor shadow. Inside, the operative known as Void prepared his infiltration equipment. The human battleship had created the perfect distraction, exactly as his employers had predicted it would. The real mission was about to begin, and the fate of both humanity and the Galactic Compact hung in the balance. The docking clamps engaged with a resonating thud that echoed throughout the Defiance's hull. Captain Wright felt the subtle shift as the ship's artificial gravity synchronized with the station's field. They were now physically connected to Celestial Station, the heart of galactic politics, and potentially the center of a conspiracy against humanity. Docking complete, Captain, reported Lieutenant Chen. Station authorities are requesting our delegation report to Chamber Alpha within 2 hours. Wright nodded. Prepare the evidence team. Full security detail, and make sure everyone's wearing the passive scanners. The ship's security chief, Major Rivera, stepped forward. Captain, we've completed the additional sweep you requested. We found something concerning. He handed her a small datapad. Wright's expression remained neutral as she reviewed the findings, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the device. A quantum entanglement transmitter, she stated flatly, hidden in the maintenance shaft adjacent to the drive section. Yes, Mom. Military grade, but untraceable. Someone on this ship placed it there within the last 12 hours. Wright locked eyes with her security chief. We have a traitor on board. While the hunt for the saboteur intensified throughout the Defiance, Void slipped through the station's maintenance tunnels with practiced ease. The security upgrades implemented for the human delegation's arrival were impressive but predictable. He'd studied council protocols for years, knew their blind spots intimately. His neural implant projected the station's schematics directly onto his retina, highlighting his path to the councilor's private chambers. The information he sought wouldn't be found in any database or record system. It would be in the one place even the most paranoid diplomat would consider secure: their personal quarters. Asset 7 approaching target location, he subvocalized to his handlers. Estimated window is 14 minutes before next security sweep. As the human delegation prepared to disembark, Dr. Kelly made final adjustments to the quantum-locked case. The evidence inside represented 6 months of painstaking analysis, tracing connections between seemingly unrelated incidents across human space. The pattern was unmistakable to anyone willing to see it: systematic testing of Earth's defenses and response capabilities. Are we really ready for this? Dr. Abernathy asked quietly. If we're right, we're essentially accusing founding members of the Council of violating their own most sacred laws. Kelly met his gaze steadily. If we're right, then they've already moved against us. The Proxima outpost was just the beginning. Next time, it might be a colony with thousands of civilians. Deep in the Defiance's engineering section, Raj Patel stared at his console in disbelief. The quantum fluctuations weren't random malfunctions. They were deliberate alterations to the drive's containment protocols, subtle enough to go unnoticed during standard diagnostics, but building toward catastrophic failure. Torres, lock down the drive control systems. Authorization Patil Alpha 7. No commands get through without my direct verification. Sir, that's against regulation protocol for docked operations. Just do it, Patil snapped, already moving toward the main control junction. And get me Captain Wright now. In her quarters, Wright was securing her sidearm when Patil's urgent call came through. His explanation sent a chill down her spine. Someone had programmed the quantum drive to destabilize during the council presentation, potentially creating an explosion that would destroy not only the Defiance, but a significant portion of the station as well. The perfect way to silence humanity's accusations while framing them as reckless aggressors who couldn't control their own military technology. "How long?" she demanded. 3 hours at most before the cascade becomes irreversible, Paddle replied. "I can try to isolate the corrupted protocols, but whoever did this knew our systems intimately." Wright made her decision instantly. Implement containment procedures, but do it quietly. If our saboteur realizes we're onto them, they might accelerate the timeline. As she ended the communication, her door chime sounded. Commander Hayes stood outside, his face grim. Security found Chief Warrant Officer Daniels attempting to access the weapons control system. "He's in custody, but he's not talking." Daniels. Wright couldn't hide her shock. "He's been with me for 3 deployments, which gave him perfect access and trust," Hayes noted grimly. "Ma'am, there's more. We found this in his quarters." He handed her a small data crystal, Juraxian manufacture, but with modifications that matched the technology found at the destroyed Proxima outpost. Meanwhile, Ambassador Ziv Toril slithered hurriedly through the station's diplomatic wing, all 12 of his eyes scanning constantly for observers. The emergency council session called to address the human situation had been moved up by 2 hours, exactly when the Defiance's quantum drive was scheduled to fail catastrophically. He had served the compact faithfully for centuries, believing in its mission to prevent another galactic war. But this, the deliberate sacrifice of hundreds of innocents, violated everything he had once stood for. His decision made, the ancient diplomat changed direction, heading not toward the council chambers, but toward the human docking bay. If the plan couldn't be stopped entirely, at least he could warn them. What he didn't notice was the shadow detaching itself from an alcove behind him. Void had found his target, and the diplomat's unexpected change of course only confirmed what his handler suspected. Ziv Toril's resolve was wavering. As Captain Wright led her evidence team toward the station's diplomatic section, the Defiance's sensors registered an unauthorized access to Airlock 7, the emergency egress point closest to the quantum drive. Simultaneously, Ambassador Ziv Toril was hurrying toward their position from an adjacent corridor, pursued by an unidentified figure moving with unnatural speed. The pieces were converging, the carefully orchestrated trap about to spring shut around humanity's bold gambit. And beneath it all, the quantum drive's containment field continued its program degradation, counting down to a catastrophe that would reshape galactic politics forever. Captain Wright's tactical comm crackled with urgent alerts as she led her team through the station's curved corridors. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated. "Captain, this is Rivera. We've got multiple breach attempts on our computer core. Someone's trying to access the weapons systems remotely." Before Wright could respond, a second alert came through. "Engineering to Captain. The quantum destabilization is accelerating. We've got 90 minutes at most before critical failure." Wright made an instant decision. "Hayes, take half the security team and get back to the ship. Support Patel however he needs. Dr. Kelly, you and I will continue to the council chambers with the evidence." As Hayes' team peeled off, Wright's comm unit picked up a new signal, a station-wide announcement in the formal tones of council protocol. "Emergency session convening in Central Chamber. All council representatives report immediately." Repeat, emergency session convening. "They've moved up the meeting," Dr. Kelly noted, her face tense. "They're not waiting for our presentation." "Then we crashed their party," Wright replied grimly. They rounded the corner and nearly collided with a massive alien form. Wright's hand went instantly to her sidearm, but she froze when she recognized Ambassador Ziv Toril, all 12 of his eyes wide with what looked like panic. "Captain Wright." The diplomat wheezed, his breathing labored. "You must evacuate immediately. Your ship. They plan to." A sharp hissing sound cut through the air. The ambassador's sentence ended in a gurgle as a thin metallic projectile pierced through his central nervous cluster. The massive body crashed to the deck, leaking bioluminescent fluid. "Contact," shouted Wright's security lead, shields deploying as the team formed a protective circle around their captain and the evidence case. From the shadows emerged not one figure but three, each wearing the distinctive light-bending camouflage of elite Juraxian hunters. The technology wasn't supposed to exist outside of historical archives, banned for centuries under the compact's weapons limitations. "Secure the case," Wright ordered, drawing her sidearm as the corridor erupted in weapons fire. Back on the Defiance, Commander Hayes sprinted through the ship's corridors, a terrible suspicion forming in his mind. If Daniels wasn't working alone, if there were other compromised crew members, then returning to the ship might have been exactly what the saboteurs wanted. "Rivera, I need a full lockdown of all command systems. Authorization Hayes Omega-3. And get me a direct line to Patel in engineering." The response came not from Rivera, but from an unfamiliar voice. "I'm afraid Commander Rivera is indisposed at the moment, Commander." Hayes spun to face a junior officer he recognized from security, Lieutenant Voss. The young man's uniform was impeccable, his stance perfect, but the weapon in his hand was definitely not standard issue. "The Council sent their regards," Voss said, his voice eerily calm. "They've been waiting a long time for humanity to make this mistake." In engineering, Raj Patel worked feverishly to isolate the corrupted drive protocols. Torres stood beside him, her hands flying over a secondary console as they fought to prevent the impending catastrophe. "I've identified the primary infection vector," she reported. "It's elegant. I've never seen code like this. Definitely not human in origin." Patel nodded grimly. "We need to purge the entire control module and restart with backup systems. It's our only shot." As Torres initiated the emergency purge sequence, the engineering bay doors slid open to reveal a figure that made both engineers freeze in shock. Standing in the entrance was Admiral Santiago himself, the man who should have been back on Earth, the man who had authorized the Defiance's mission in the first place. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the Admiral said, stepping into the room. Behind him stood 4 security officers, their weapons trained on the engineering team. "Admiral." Patel's confusion was evident. "How are you here?" "Why?" "Because someone needed to ensure humanity's grand entrance onto the galactic stage went exactly as planned," Santiago replied, his smile cold and unfamiliar. "And I don't mean this pathetic peace mission you think you're on." With a casual motion, Santiago reached up and touched his temple. His features shimmered and dissolved, revealing the gray-scaled face of a shifter, one of the mythical shapeshifters thought to have been extinct since the Sundering Wars. "The real Santiago never left Earth," the creature said, its voice now a multi-toned hiss. "And when the Defiance destroys half of Celestial Station, humanity will be blamed for the greatest act of terrorism the galaxy has seen in a millennium." In the Council's central chamber, the emergency session was already underway. On the massive display dominating the chamber's far wall, a live feed showed the UES Defiance docked at the station, its imposing silhouette framed against the star-speckled void. "The evidence is irrefutable," the Juraxian High Counselor was saying, his massive form dominating the speaker's platform. "Humanity has violated the most sacred tenets of the Compact by constructing a dedicated war vessel. We must respond decisively before their aggressive tendencies threaten galactic peace." What none of the Council members noticed was the small, unmarked vessel detaching from the Defiance's hull and silently accelerating away from the station. Inside, the operative known as Void transmitted a simple coded message: "Package secured. Operation Sundering is in final phase." The true mission, and the real identity of the quantum-locked case, was about to be revealed. Captain Wright dove behind a structural support column as energy weapons fire scorched the air where she had stood moments before. Her security team was down to 3 members, holding a defensive position around Dr. Kelly and the quantum-locked case. The Juraxian hunters were relentless, their advanced camouflage making them nearly impossible to track. "We need to reach the central chamber," Wright shouted over the cacophony of battle. "Kelly, can you get a signal through to the council?" The scientist nodded grimly, fingers dancing across her portable communicator. "Working on it, but there's some kind of jamming field." On the Defiance, Raj Patel stared at the shifter wearing Santiago's face, his mind racing. The creature thought it had them trapped, but there was one system the saboteurs couldn't have known about: the experimental emergency protocol he and Torres had installed just 3 days before departure. "You won't get away with this," Patel said, deliberately raising his voice to draw the shifter's attention. "The Council will never believe humanity responsible once they see the evidence." The shifter laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Evidence? Your precious case contains nothing but fabricated data. Our agents ensured that." While the creature gloated, Patel's hands moved beneath the console, activating a sequence of commands through the haptic interface only he could feel. A nearly imperceptible nod from Torres confirmed she understood what he was doing. In another section of the ship, Commander Hayes found himself in a desperate standoff with Lieutenant Voss and 2 other compromised security officers. They had him cornered in the armory, but what they didn't realize was that he had managed to activate the ship's internal defense protocols before they'd cut off his comlink. "You're too late," Hayes said calmly. "Captain Wright has already transmitted the real evidence to her personal contacts on 3 Council worlds. Even if you destroy the Defiance, the truth about your conspiracy will spread." Voss sneered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "A convenient bluff, Commander, but..." The ship's internal defense systems activated with a sudden whine. Targeted stun fields dropped all 3 compromised officers before they could react, their weapons clattering to the deck. Hayes didn't waste a second. "Computer, emergency command override. Hayes Epsilon 1. Lock down all weapons systems and initiate engineering security protocol." In the central chamber, the Juraxian High Counselor was reaching the crescendo of his indictment against humanity when the massive doors slid open. A bloodied Captain Wright stood in the entrance, her uniform torn and scorched, but her eyes blazing with determination. Behind her, the remaining members of her security team supported a limping Dr. Kelly, who clutched the quantum-locked case to her chest. "High Counselor Drac Thull," Wright's voice rang out across the suddenly silent chamber. "I formally charge you and your co-conspirators with violations of Articles 3, 7, and 9 of the Galactic Compact, including unauthorized weapons development, espionage against a member species, and the murder of Proxima Centauri colonists." The massive Juraxian rose to his full height, towering over the other representatives. "These are absurd accusations from a species caught in the act of military aggression. Where is your proof?" Dr. Kelly stepped forward, placing the case on the central platform. "Right here. And unlike what your assassins believe, these are the real files, quantum encrypted with copies simultaneously transmitted to 17 independent worlds." As the case began to unlock, a tremor ran through the station. On the main display, the Defiance was engulfed in a strange, shimmering field of energy. "What have you done?" gasped the Altrusian representative. Wright smiled grimly. "That would be our chief engineer activating our ship's true defense system, not a weapon, but a quantum isolation field. Every saboteur and piece of sabotage aboard is now locked in a temporal stasis bubble, including your shifter agent." The chamber erupted in chaos as the case finally opened, revealing not data files, but a single, living specimen, a parasitic neural modifier of Juraxian design, identical to those found on the bodies of the Proxima scientists. "This is why the Defiance was built," Wright declared over the uproar. "Not as a weapon of war, but as the only vessel capable of maintaining a quantum isolation field around these neural parasites without falling under their influence. We needed to bring the evidence directly to the full council, where not even the conspirators could deny it." The Juraxian counselor roared with rage, his massive form lunging toward Wright. But before he could reach her, his body convulsed violently. From beneath his ceremonial collar emerged a writhing, tentacled organism, identical to the one in the case. Other council members recoiled in horror as similar parasites began to emerge from several representatives around the chamber. The neural modifiers can't maintain control when exposed to the quantum frequencies we're broadcasting, Dr. Kelly explained, her voice clinical despite the grotesque scene unfolding before them. Humanity didn't violate the compact. We came to save it. As security forces rushed in to contain the affected counselors, Wright's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. It was Hayes, his voice tight with urgency. "Captain, we've secured the ship and contained the saboteurs, but there's something you need to know." The operative called Void. He wasn't working for the conspirators. According to the files we found on Voss's terminal, he's part of a third faction entirely, something called the Preservers. And whatever he took from our ship wasn't what either side expected. Wright frowned. "What did he take, Commander?" "That's just it, Captain. According to our inventory, nothing is missing. But he left something behind, embedded in our computer core. It's some kind of ancient activation key, predating even the Sundering Wars. And ma'am, it's rewriting our quantum drive protocols as we speak." Outside the station, against the backdrop of distant stars, the Defiance's hull began to glow with intricate patterns of light, symbols of a language lost to time, marking humanity's unexpected role in a game spanning millennia. 3 days after what was already being called the revelation of Celestial Station, Captain Wright stood at the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the stream of diplomatic vessels arriving from across the galaxy. The emergency council session had extended into a full constitutional convention, the first in 7 centuries, as representatives from every member species gathered to address the parasitic infiltration and its implications. "Quite a view," Commander Hayes remarked, joining her by the viewport. "Half the galaxy's diplomatic corps in one place. Never thought I'd see it." Wright nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And they're all here because humanity refused to follow the established rules." "Speaking of which," Hayes said, offering her a data pad, Dr. Kelly finished her preliminary analysis of the parasites. They'd been active for at least 3 centuries, possibly targeting species just as they achieved interstellar capability. Wright scanned the report, her brow furrowing. "So they weren't just targeting humans." "No, we were just the first to recognize the pattern and fight back." Hayes leaned against the railing. "The Ultrusians have officially withdrawn their objections to the Defiance's classification. Apparently, being free of mural parasites has changed their perspective on defense vessels." Wright allowed herself a small smile. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity's apparent violation of the compact had ended up saving it. Already, the interim council had voted to modify the military restrictions, allowing for dedicated defense ships specifically designed to detect and contain the parasitic threat. "And what about our mysterious benefactor?" she asked. "Any progress on understanding what Void left behind?" Hayes shook his head. "Patil and his team are still working on it. The symbols that appeared on our hull match no known language, but they seem to be altering our quantum drive on a fundamental level. Whatever the preservers are, they've been playing a very long game." In engineering, Raj Patel stared in fascination at the simulation playing out on his main display. The alterations to the quantum drive weren't destructive at all. They were revelatory. The equations flowing across his screen represented a completely new understanding of subspace mechanics, one that would revolutionize human technology for generations to come. "It's like they've handed us the keys to the universe," Torres whispered beside him. "But why us? Why humans?" Patel shook his head slowly. "I don't think it was about us specifically. I think whoever these preservers are, they were waiting for a species that would question the restrictions, that would build something like the Defiance not as a weapon, but as a shield." In her private quarters, Dr. Kelly was conducting her own research, comparing the ancient symbols now etched into the Defiance's hull with archaeological records from a dozen worlds. The pattern was becoming clear. These same symbols had appeared throughout history, always at pivotal moments when civilizations faced extinction-level threats. The preservers, whoever they were, had been guiding galactic evolution for millennia. As the Defiance prepared to lead the newly formed Compact Defense Fleet on its maiden patrol, Ambassador Chen, Earth's newly appointed representative to the Reformed Council, delivered a stirring address that was broadcast across thousands of worlds. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. What started as a moment of crisis has become an opportunity for genuine cooperation. Humanity came to the stars late, but perhaps that gave us the perspective needed to see what others could not. We built the Defiance not to defy the Compact, but to protect it. And now, together with our galactic neighbors, we forge a new path forward, one based not on restriction and fear, but on vigilance and mutual defense. Captain Wright listened to the speech from her command chair, her crew at their stations around her. The quantum drive hummed with new harmonics, the ancient technology merging with human engineering in ways they were only beginning to understand. "New course laid in, Captain," reported the helmsman. "The Arcturus anomaly awaits our investigation." Wright nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. "Engage quantum drive, Lieutenant. Let's see what else is out there waiting for us." As the Defiance accelerated into the depths of space, its hull gleaming with the luminous script of a civilization that had watched over the galaxy for eons, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity's first battleship had changed everything, not through its weapons, but through its purpose. Not as a harbinger of war, but as a sentinel against the darkness that had nearly swallowed the stars themselves. The galaxy would never be the same again, and neither would humanity.